In 2022, a young woman by the name of MahsaAmini was detained by Iran's so-called morality police in Tehran. They arrested her for allegedly violating the country's strictly enforced Islamic dress code, which requires women to cover their heads and the shape of their bodies. Amini was pulled into a police van. She died in the hospital 3 days later. She was 22 years old. Her death sparked a wave of protests across the country. Women defiantly burned their headscarves and cut their hair, unafraid of the consequences. The movement became known as Zan Zindagi Azadi, women, life, freedom. The movement made a difference, at least for a while. Following Amini's death, women across Iran continued to flout the dress code, appearing in public with their hair uncovered. The morality police largely pulled back. But 2 years later, the Iranian regime is cracking down once again. Iran says it has launched a new operation aimed at enforcing the country's mandatory hijab law. Amnesty International says Iran is waging a war on women and has started deploying large numbers of security forces to intensify the, quote, enforcement of compulsory veiling in public spaces through subjecting women and girls to constant surveillance, beatings, sexual violence, electric shocks, arbitrary arrest and detention, and other harassment, end quote. A spokesperson for the United Nations Human Rights Office adds that, quote, there have been reports of widespread arrests and harassment of women and girls, many between the ages of 15 and 17, end quote. The London-based Iran International posted this video of a woman being apprehended by Iranian police in Tehran. The outlet said she was arrested for violating the dress code. NBC News has not independently verified these details, but you can see both male and female agents detaining the woman and forcefully putting her into the back of a van. According to Sky News, the woman who appears to be assisting in the arrest, the women who appear to be assisting in the arrest are known as, quote, ambassadors of kindness, end quote. Ambassadors of kindness. They help enforce the so-called morality laws. According to the United Nations, hundreds of businesses and restaurants have been shut down by authorities for allegedly failing to enforce the hijab law. As for MahsaAmini, a UN fact-finding mission said in March that Iran is to blame for the physical violence that killed her. The UN mission found that Iran committed crimes against humanity in its violent repression of the subsequent protests against her death as well. Iran has denied responsibility for Amini's death and rejected accusations from human rights organizations by witnesses and foreign governments that it crushed peaceful protests with violence.
I want to go to Chris Cabrera, National Border Patrol Council Vice President. Chris, you've warned about this. You said it's getting dangerous. Now we have the proof, but we don't have much of a reaction. What do you make of it?
I think it's par for the course. It's unfortunate, but these incidents happen a lot more than actually get reported in the news. We, as a government, tend to do nothing about it, so it just emboldens them to keep taking those steps forward. And eventually, one of us is going to get hurt, which is completely unacceptable.
You know what's scary about all of that, Chris? You know this far better than I. The shots are coming on the Mexican side of the border. Now, whether that's cartels involved, which have gotten pretty bold, or others, it tells you what you're dealing with, doesn't it?
Yeah, it speaks volumes. And, I think everybody, when they're dealing with anything border related, is getting extremely bold, because whether it's them shooting at us, them running from us in a car chase, or them coming in droves, assaulting us, whatever may happen, we lack teeth to do anything about it. So it's becoming an open season on Border Patrol agents, because they know that the federal government's not going to stand up and do the right thing by the border or the Border Patrol agents.
I'm just wondering, there are all sorts of talk. If Donald Trump were to get back at the White House, he's talked about a virtual lockdown there at the border. How would something like that work?
As far as locking everything down, I think it's pretty simple. It's mandatory detention, mandatory removal. Once you start sending everybody back, they know the gravy train's over and they stop coming. It happened in 2004, 2005 with the expedited removal. They found a different loophole. We have yet to close that loophole that's been open for quite a while. So once you close that loophole and get serious about it, people will stop coming, because they know where they're not getting released into the country.
Well, I do know the Biden administration has these new rules in effect introducing them for asylum seekers. I don't know if that's affected the traffic of asylum seekers who, once they hear it, they think twice about coming. That doesn't seem to be happening, or maybe they just haven't heard the news. What's going on?
Oh yeah, I think part of it is the news, but the big part of it is it going to be enforced? Because we can tell people till we're blue in the face, hey, don't come. If you come, we're going to send you back, and then we don't send you back. They're still going to come. So the rule is meaningless unless it's enforced.
So where do you see this going? I mean, we're entering the summer. It's going to get god-awful hot, very dangerous. These cartels are involved, the likes of which and the degree to which we've never seen in the past. Many more coming from many more countries. Play it out.
Yeah, it's going to get, I mean, you're talking about getting hot. I mean, 2 days ago, it was 108 here in the Rio Grande Valley. It's already hot down here. It seems like Texas is already preheating. But it's going to get worse. More people are going to come and more people are going to die. And it's unfortunate. And unfortunately, I don't think this administration cares. They say they care about people coming into this country, about migration, as they call it. But if they cared, they'd put a stop to it, because hundreds of people are going to die in this summer just from heat alone.
Well, it is now among the biggest issues for Americans of all types, in all regions, in all parts of this country. So obviously it's fairly important to voters. We'll watch it closely. Chris, thank you very much. Good seeing you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Here in the U.S. and keep an eye out tonight and right into the weekend. Millions of Americans could actually see the northern lights as far south as Alabama because of this very rare solar storm. But could this geomagnetic storm also bring possible cell phone, GPS, and internet disruptions? But authorities are warning tonight, and here's Alex Perez.
Tonight, millions of Americans across the upper U.S. will potentially see the northern lights thanks to a severe solar storm. NOAA issuing this rare watch for the first time in nearly 20 years. A geomagnetic storm so strong it could possibly threaten communications and power grids here on Earth. Solar flares triggering spectacular displays of the aurora borealis, potentially as far south as Alabama. The first solar flares erupting Wednesday morning, directed towards Earth from the sun's corona, visible from Earth only during a total solar eclipse. The cosmic phenomenon Americans across the country stopped to witness just a little over a month ago. Astrophysicists warn the impact of this storm, a 4 on a scale of 1 to 5, could have an effect right here on Earth, potentially disrupting communications, the power grid, radio signals, and GPS and other satellite operations.
Geomagnetic storm, even a severe one, may not be all that troubling. But if we're not built to take it, then it could cause big problems.
And David, this solar activity could continue through the weekend.
All right, we're back with Congressman Winstrup. We're so glad we have you back because you're doing something a lot of Americans want to have done, which is you're trying to get documents out of the State Department. What has been the response? And this is about COVID.
Well, we're waiting for a response, and I will say, we want these statements to be declassified, because what happened is that through a FOIA request, the State Department put out a classified document, but they redacted everything but the headers, and the headers indicate that there is a cover-up, that the CCP blocked the thorough investigation. As you said earlier, right? We know all of this basically because we watched it in real time, but it also indicates that the PLA, the People's Liberation Army of China, had relationships with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Not a surprise there either. So we've requested that they declassify. But, I also serve on the Intelligence Committee, and I'm chairman of Oversight. And so we can hopefully will at least be able to see these documents fully in that setting. And, you mentioned what Dr. Fauci said. He goes, CCP will not tolerate any misinformation. Well, they won't tolerate any information except for their very much misinformation. But let me share quickly the headlines that we found in this document. They said the outbreak could have been contained if Beijing had not covered it up. The President Xi lied to obfuscate his role in the cover-up. That the PLA had contractors building the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the PLA was still present after it was built. And we have cyber evidence that shows that the PLA had shadow labs inside the Wuhan Institute of Virology and their engineering university. So it's all adding up. We need the documents.
But none of this makes sense, because if China's our adversary, the State Department would want us to know that they were the ones responsible for this. So it says to me that maybe we were either funding this bioweapon lab in some way, and it also indicates that Fauci had to have known that because the grants would have come from him. Isn't that what this is really about?
That's a big part of it, Rachel, and I'm glad you say that. But Fauci now claims, well, I don't really have anything to do with the grants, but sign them. That's what he said when we had him in for a transcribed interview. He said an advisory board does it. When EcoHealth Alliance doesn't comply with the terms of the grant, what happens? He said, oh, that's over in compliance. I don't have anything to do with this. So, they're passing the buck pretty much throughout. And I would tell you there's a lot of changes we have to make in any type of grant process. And that includes have briefings from our intelligence community before decisions are made. And understand what EcoHealth Alliance did, what they proposed in the grant with NIH. This was rejected by DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They rejected it, basically saying it's too risky, but they go over to NIH, they get the grant, a grant that Dr. Fauci signed off on.
Yeah, because no one's been held accountable. EcoHealth Alliance got yet another grant. It's just unbelievable. I really hope that you get these documents. The American people deserve to know what happened and our own country's complicity in what is potentially a bioweapon that fundamentally transformed our entire economy and way of life. People died too. Congressman, thank you for staying on this. Thank you so much.